I've used this slide before. I like it a lot because I like Mark Twain. He may be becoming politically incorrect, but he had some really pithy statements. And this one I like all the time: lies, damn lies, and statistics. Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain. So here's the interesting thing that we are: is the economy up or is the economy down? And the third quarter of 2022, the government reported a 2.6% GDP growth. Yet you're having 10% fewer house sales. You're having all these other people do different things that are defensive, that are usually in a declining economy. Also, if you've ever seen any of my posts, I have a post, it's in my feed, on how housing affects inflation. We'll talk a little bit more about that in another slide. But the thing that's most interesting about it is the Wall Street Journal, and it's another Wall Street Journal video I added to a post where I kind of explained what was going on and what they were doing. And it was only about 4 minutes long, and it was about how the Bureau of Labor Statistics calculates inflation for housing. And when you see that, you realize that these numbers that they're producing are fantasies. They have nothing related to reality. The increase in housing doesn't get into their numbers for a year. So interest rates have gone up 225% since last year, and that's hasn't quite affected their numbers yet. So when they say that in the month of October inflation was only 7.7%, I would be very dubious about that. I'm also concerned how they got a 2.6% increase when everybody and their brother is laying off employees, entrenching, cutting costs, and all this stuff. Maybe it's because they sold 180 million barrels in the strategic reserve. They somehow got that in GDP. I don't know. The good news is employment claims are holding, and the employment claims, why they're holding is because small businesses are hiring, still hiring hourly and blue collar type workers. So when that stops, I think we're going to see a whole change in the entire economy and the process of how they measure these things. So here's the thing about housing: the number of listings increased 33.5% in October. Do you know how massive that is? That in the United States, the number of houses listed for sale went up 33.5% in October. The average American moves every 7.5 years, and that time gets longer. 50 years ago, the average American moved every 3 to 3.5 years. And each time we have a real estate recession, which happens about every 10 or 12 years, that time lengthens. The inventory of unsold homes only went up 0.5%. I don't quite know what to do about that or to say about it. This was really interesting and really telling. Median prices went up 13.3%. Now, that doesn't mean your house went up 13%. That means the shift in who's selling and closing went way up market, 13.5% up market. So basically, it means that the average of how they calculate it, so people that are on the lower end of the market can't afford the 7.8%, 7.08% 30-year mortgage. That's the average right now. And by the way, that mortgage rate's going to go up by about 3/4 of a point over the next 30 to 60 days, because mortgage rates usually lag by 30 to 60 days what the Fed does. And so it's people that can afford these higher rates are the ones that are buying right now. And we'll see how that lasts and where that goes with the economy. And if the Fed keeps raising rates, it'll probably price the upper end of the market out too. The time on the market went up 6 days to 51 days. So the average time about maybe just about a year ago was probably less than 30 days, probably less than 15, because remember how crazy the housing market, and now it's an average of 51 days to move a property off of a listing. 30-year mortgages are now 7.1% versus October of 22, where it was 3.3%. So that's a 214% increase. That's going to have a dramatic effect on real estate and everything else. So is the economy up or down? So today, Amazon announced that they're going to lay off 10,000 people. And we've already had large layoffs. I think is Meta, which was formerly Facebook, is laying off 11,000. Disney's doing something like 10 or 15,000. Microsoft is the numbers around 10,000. Walmart is laying off. Goldman Sachs is laying off. These are all bellwether large companies. And I think if we keep our ear to the ground, what are they doing? Well, they have economists on staff. And the whole process is you look at your sales and you look at your customers and you raise prices before the costs catch up with you. then you start cutting costs to prepare for the downturn in the economy. Now, we're not going to have an official recession for at least another 6 months, because we had 2 quarters in a row, the first and second, where the economy declined. The government right before the election. So, you can say whether that was, maybe a little manipulative or whatever, but they reported that we had a 2.6% increase. And I don't know if you'll go back to all the way to 2016 when Trump was running for president. The left-leaning economists at that time were saying, "Oh, it's impossible," because he was saying we would have 4% growth. And that's impossible. Well, Trump had somewhere around 3% growth. And here we've had 2.6 in that 1 quarter. So we won't officially be in a recession, but things are moving all over the place. So here's an interesting thing, and this is part of that post I mentioned before, that interest rates cause inflation. And why is that? Because in housing costs is the number one expense of people besides taxes. The average American pays more in taxes than they do food, clothing, and shelter combined. But right now, 38% of everybody, the average person's budget is 38% for housing. And they use a lower number. They use 33%, but and like I said, it takes them a year. Interest rate increases cause lower housing activity. Again, people aren't qualifying for loans, and that's why the number of houses being sold is dropping, and it's going upscale, so the people with higher income can pay the higher interest rates. And so, like I said, the average American moves in every 7.5 years. So that's roughly a 7 or 8% change due to deaths, divorces, marriages, job transfers, all kinds of stuff. And that's going to work its way in here. Lower activity causes related industries to decline. Look at all the things that go into housing. I mentioned that in the intro. It's carpet, it's cabinets, it's appliances, it's plumbing, it's, you name it, it goes in there. And if housing grinds to a halt, then they grind to a halt as well. Related industries decline. In other words, when the appliance makers and the carpet makers and the cabinet makers and all the things that go into your house, furniture, all these things, they cause a downward spiral. So using interest rates to affect the economy and affect housing, they basically cause inflation, because you're now paying 225% more for the loan than you did a year ago. So that means the house is more expensive. A bigger slice of your budget is going to go into housing, cutting out all these other things, or in fact, you're not going to move. And because you didn't move, you didn't buy the new furniture, you didn't buy the new carpet, you didn't buy the new paint, you didn't buy new appliances. So it causes this downward spiral. And as far as controlling inflation, it's kind of an interesting thing. You're stopping this economic activity, but you're making the thing that causes that economic activity significantly more expensive, hence inflation. So I would say take your cues from the majors. So that, like I said, this process is to evaluate your sales and your customers and get tight with all those people, and then to start cutting costs, be efficient. So here's what you can do. You need to know your sales. You need to know your products and services and know your customer. Do those things which I mentioned in the first one. Get your numbers. If you don't have somebody on staff that can do them, you can get a VA to do them for a mind-blowingly small amount of money every day, to have the spreadsheets waiting for you to show what you sold, who you sold it to, and for how much. And then to know your customers. Now, this takes a little more work, where you've got to kind of pull different sales out of the pile and see who you're selling to. If you don't, but don't take it for granted. I can't tell you how many clients I've been to where I go out there and they tell me what they do, and then when I pull it, and the Excel is amazing. You can put a whole company's sales on a spreadsheet and slice and dice it any way you want. It's not really what they think. And that's, be like the majors. The majors know. They pay people to figure these things out, and they know. So as a small business owner, you just need to know, and it's not that hard to get anymore. Everything's electronic. You can have it. So another thing is what you can do is cut costs. Liquidate your slow moving inventory. That's another thing that the majors are doing. The majors have been kind of caught with the wrong inventory. The pandemic ended and people are buying other stuff, and then they have all these things. And there was also a bigger problem because of the supply chain issues of getting stuff here, because everything's made somewhere else. Get rid of marginal products and services. There's things that you're probably selling that cause a lot of expense and a lot of issue, and you don't make any money on. Like my example of the racquetball clubs and the gym chain. I was a CFO of $100 million a year seafood operation, and I used to, that we had problems figuring out what the profit was. We'd have these goals and it wouldn't happen. So I started producing a report. It had it every morning before the trucks went out. The general manager could look at what was on there and see what products are being sold. And it caused a change in the product mix of what they were offering, because they're finding out there was a lot of stuff on there that, with the cost of the truck and the driver and whatever, they were losing money on it. And this is what everybody needs to look at. And, another term for this is like kill your darlings. You may have this thing that you like, but it doesn't do anything for you. Get rid of it. And you have to get in an information place where you got to have that information to know to do that. So the other thing is to become more efficient. So it starts with your pricing. Get your prices up. You can only do that if you know your customer and you're selling to the right person. Get your costs down, and then become more efficient. Where are you having hours, shifts, and operations spent? Where are you in your operations overall? There may be certain things that you can cut out that aren't making money for you. Remember, the holy grail is now becoming gross margin. You're chasing gross margin because it's going to be significantly harder to get, because the number of clients, customers, etc., is going to decline. And only those people that are truly connected to your product are going to buy. And you're going to be in this tough position of having to raise your prices because your suppliers are raising them, or your employees want more money. It's a kind of a tough cycle to break out of. The other thing is to conserve cash. You got to be ready for that rainy day. It's negotiate. It's sort of like, real estate's location. Well, for you to hang on and get your cash cycle in good shape, it's negotiate. You have to review your vendors, you have to review your suppliers, and you have to be in a position to work out what you need with them, that the cycle is positive for you. Look at that Pepsi example of mine again. They did a master stroke, and I'm going to guarantee to you that they get paid 2 or 3 times by their customer before they have to pay their vendor. But it's tight with the vendor. They've worked it out. This is where the people skills come in. These 3 things, negotiate, are probably the most important thing, because that's how you'll be able to get to your vendors. Review your vendors. Maybe you need to change your vendors. Maybe you need to ask your vendors, what do I need to do to get this thing that I need to stay cash positive, profitable, and in business in a tougher economic environment? Review your other suppliers, not just like the landlord, the other things that you spend money on. Take a review of that and see how you can position that. And that takes people skills. And those people skills are easy to come by. And it's not just, oh, hey, do this for me. There's a certain way to go about it that can make everything better. And so that when the economy turns up, then look at what happens when you have all these things under control. So that concludes our presentation today. It was a little longer than I thought and had a little more interruptions, but that's Murphy's Law, right? I appreciate everybody showing up and seeing this. Like I said, it's going to be on my LinkedIn feed. It's also going to be in the LinkedIn feed for Power and Performance Coaching and all of the showcase pages. Remember that we have showcase pages of people that will help you in sales, financing, taxes, you name it. And their consultations are free, and they have free tools for you to use. So take a look at that over at Power and Performance Coaching on my LinkedIn. That's my page. And remember, this is also on YouTube, on Greg Andrick Business Freedom Conversation. So again, I thank you for listening to what we're doing, and we have this for you to improve your freedom, because freedom is the number one reason why people buy or start a business. And what happens is we get hemmed in by all the different factors that we interact with. We love business because it's people and it's interacting with people. So on behalf of Keith Cothrell and myself, I thank you for showing up. Take a look at the videos. Have any questions, you know where to get me. We're available, and we hope you'll have a prosperous month going forward, and we'll see you in December. Thank you.
Thank you.